Let's start off with identifying whether or not something is a sig fig, because that, you really can't do anything else unless you can identify if something is significant or not. So in the number 1023.056, we know that all the non-zeros are significant. That's easy. The other numbers, and I think most people got this one right. Is this 0 significant? Why? Between two non-zeros. Is this 0 significant? Yes, between two non-zeros. So every single thing in that one is significant. None of those zeros are not significant. Okay, so in the second one we have 300200. So we know the 3 and the 2 are significant. Are these two zeros significant? Yes. Why? Between two non-zeros. What about these two? No. They're not significant because they're at the end of a number, in front of the decimal. There's no decimal behind them. So that one has 4 sig figs. This was the one that gave people the most problems. 0.00975. I think this was by far the most missed question in that top section. So we know the 9, 7, and 5 are significant. Oops, I just flipped. Are those two significant? No, they're placeholders. Leading zeros are never significant, so those are not. Is this significant? No. It's a leading zero. It's a placeholder. You don't even have to write that one. I usually don't. And I don't know. I haven't checked this with any of my friends in math, but I never write that. I always just write 0.0975 or whatever. I never write that leading zero. You don't have to do it. Okay, it's not necessary. Next one, again we have 0.05080. Every possible rule for zeros you could throw in here. We know the 5 and 8 are significant. We'll just start at one end and go all the way through. Is that significant? No, placeholder. Is that significant? No, placeholder. Is that significant? Yes, because it's between two non-zeros. Is that significant? Yes. That's the one that gives people problems, because that is at the end of a number, behind the decimal. That is significant. So that one is significant. So that one had 4. Okay, last one in the top section, 600. We know the 6 is significant. What about these two? No. They're at the end of a number. There's no decimal after them. If we needed them to be significant for some reason, if we had measured with that level of precision and we were recording that, we could do one of two things. We could do this, or we could do this. And I know when we get to the rounding, I had somebody who was clever enough to put things into scientific notation. That's an easy way to make sure you always get your sig figs right, because however many sig figs you have, you put that many in the scientific notation. So it actually makes your sig fig work simpler. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Questions on the top section. If you missed something, do you now go like, oh yeah, I forgot that rule, or oops, I had that backwards? Okay, that's good. All right, on the second section, rounding. This is the section that was by far the toughest. The most people in the room missed the most questions in this chunk. So those 4 little questions, I had lots of people who missed all of them. So if you missed a bunch in there, you're in good company. It's okay. That's why we highlight these things, so we know, like, oh hey, everybody's having a problem right here. Okay, so we have 0.0215. We want to round this to 3 sig figs. So I always start with the first significant figure, 1, 2, 3. And I typically make a mark, and if you look at my key, you'll actually see. I still do this. I've been doing this for a long time. I still write a little line under the last number I'm going to keep. And sometimes I will also draw myself a little arrow to indicate, hey, Moser, you're rounding this based on that. So we can only keep up to that 2, and we're rounding or not rounding that 2 based on what comes after it. So this ends up being 612. Now, can we just leave it as 612? We have to have a placeholder 0 there. Because if we bet 6,120 cookies and I gave you 612 cookies, you would not be happy. There's a difference in those two numbers. So 6120 is 3 sig figs. Okay, now we have 9869.50, and we want to take this to 2 sig figs. So again, I'm going to do my little, oh hey, that's the number I'm going to keep. And I'm rounding it based on what comes after it. And we just do 5 and 1 to 4, don't round, 5 and up, do round. There are other ways to handle that, but I keep it simple as possible. So we have 9, that 8 is going to round up because it's followed by a 6, so we have 9, 9, and then we have to have 2 placeholders. Because otherwise we're going from almost 10,000 down to 99. So not quite 100. Okay, let's shrink these. So our next one, 46112.9903. We're told that we want to take this to 5 sig figs. So I'm going to do my little count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm rounding that based on what comes after. This one's the trickiest one. Because if I round this, that rounds up to a 10, which means I have to round this too. So this number becomes 4613.0. I now have 5 sig figs. And you know what, when you round to sig figs, a good thing to do is then check the round. Is this one significant? Is this one significant? Is this one significant? So in this, okay, we know these are all significant. Is that 0 significant? Yes. So we have 5 sig figs. I'll show you the thing that some people wanted to do, and it's a really common mistake, and I think I forgot to address it yesterday. You want to take that number, and you want to put placeholder zeros where those other things were. So we're here at 5, and then you want to go boop, boop, boop. But ask yourself this question. Look at that and say, are those significant? And most of you can say, oh yeah, because you did pretty well in the top part. Oh yeah, those would be significant. So if you're adding those, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 significant digits, not 5. So you have to, if you've got numbers that you're dropping behind the decimal, they just disappear. We don't placehold those. So those just go away. I think I just heard a robot in the hall. It's okay, I'm sure. Okay. And the last one on this section, 9490, nice, 94905.0230, and I want to take this to 1 sig fig, so that's all I can keep. Now, because the numbers that I'm sort of vaporizing are in front of the decimal, I have to put in placeholders for those, so I get, and we're rounding based on this, it does not round up. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. And again, you can look at that and check yourself, are those zeros significant? No, they're not. So you've rounded it correctly if you've done that. Questions on that? Okay, so if I put 6120.000, are those additional zeros significant? Yes. Those would all be significant zeros. So you no longer have 3 sig figs. You've made this one significant because of this decimal, and you've made these significant because zeros at the end of the number behind the decimal are significant. So instead of rounding to 3 sig figs, you've just made this a number with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sig figs. So it changes, and that's probably a good double check for yourself, is after you've rounded a number, and that's a mistake a lot of people made, so that's a good one to kind of emphasize. After you've rounded that number, look back at it and make sure that you haven't created more significant figures. Because like I said, most people are pretty good at identifying whether or not digits are significant. So check your own rounding. Other questions on this section? Going once, going twice. If a question pops up in your brain later, you can holler later. Okay, in the last of the sig fig section, the conversions was sort of my little surprise. See how you do. Many of you did really well. Some of you still need to learn your prefixes, so just get those memorized. For 10 through 13, when it says record the correct value, that means give a sig figged answer. And I realize that may not have been clear to everybody. So a lot of people just put the raw answer, because I didn't have 2 columns for it. So that's, we'll chalk that up to sort of a lack of clarity, perhaps. So for number 10, your raw answer is negative 26.2599. And if you look at the numbers going into it, 3.9 is your limiting number. But this is addition and subtraction, so the rule is not the smallest number of sig figs. The rule is the least digits behind the decimal. So you can have 1 space behind the decimal in this answer, which means you're going to keep this and round based on this. So your final recorded value for that should be negative 26.3. Okay? Negative 26.3. Oops. And you know what? We'll kind of set up in the corner for each of these which number is governing how many you can have. So for the next one, it's multiplication and division. You get a raw answer of 1507.6039. And this is multiplication and division, so we're looking at the least number of sig figs in general. Both the numbers going into it have 4 sig figs. So we have 327.1, we could say, is what's governing. Well, if we have 4 sig figs, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's where I'm going to stop. But I have to round based on this, so I get a recorded value of 1,508 for a final answer. The next one, I have a raw answer of 4.48 times 10 to the 11th. Both of the numbers that went in had 2 sig figs. I had 3.2 times 10 to the 6th. The other one also had 2 sig figs. So I can only keep one of those. So my final correct answer would be 4.5 times 10 to the 11th. Okay, makes sense? Okay, and the last of these kind of problems, and notice I only give you one addition subtraction. We don't use that as much. We use much more multiplication and division. Okay, the last one, your raw answer is 24.058 times 10 to the 11th. Well, we have a couple issues. So our limiter is the 4.6 times 10 to the 3rd that goes into this. So we can only have 2 sig figs. And our scientific notation is wrong. So we have to fix that scientific notation. So our final answer, we're going to be keeping this, rounding based on that, we end up with 2.4 times 10 to the 12th. Questions on that section? Any questions on that? Okay. The last section is conversions. Let me just give you the answers real quick because we're short on time. So the first one is 1.5 times 10 to the 1st kilometers. Then we have 6.75 times 10 to the 9th micrograms. And 8.5 times 10 to the 8th milliliters. Okay. I will put the key for the FIP quiz on the door. If you want to re-FIP yourself, I can make additional copies of that quiz. If you feel like you need additional help, and you don't have to turn those quizzes in, you know that, right? You keep them. I tutor every Monday night, regardless, but I'm also doing Thursdays by appointment. So, if you tell me 24 hours in advance is ideal. If you can't do 24 hours in advance, like if you come to me on Thursday and say, I need some help, I can wiggle it. A day's notice is better. But if you need help on this, holler. So, if you had problems on this, do you feel like you see what they were and you have them corrected mentally? Okay. All right, so tomorrow we will grade and go over homework. Monday, that means a test. So multiple choice, very conceptual out of the book, and the notes, the concepts we've talked about. Workout is just like if we took all 3 of your FIP quizzes, merge them into one unholy union, and spat them out on paper. That's what your workout will be. So, yes, ma'am.
I didn't get the